Welcome back. We now put the spotlight on the other big story we've been tracking, the death and the mystery surrounding the death of Mahant Narendra Giri. Let's in fact get you the latest. The SIT is now probing this case and it has arrested finally two people, Anand Giri, his disciple, and Adya Tiwari, a priest. Both of them have been arrested, sent to 14-day judicial custody. The police did not seek their custody today when they were presented in court. So for now, they have actually been sent to judicial custody and they will be lodged in the Naini Central Jail in Prayagraj. Over a dozen people have been questioned so far, including the security officials who were designated to look after him, people who were there, those who found the body, pulled it down from the from the hanging and kept him on the floor. All of those people have been questioned. Two netas, a police officer also questioned. Mahant Giri's gunner has been questioned. And the alleged suicide note has now been sent for handwriting analysis. Remember, we had raised this issue yesterday as to why this hasn't been done already. The first thing that should have been done when you find such a note next to a dead body is to analyze the handwriting to verify if indeed it's a suicide note written by that person. Postmortem has been conducted. Primarily, initial reports of the postmortem suggest that it was death due to asphyxiation. Viscera samples have been preserved for further investigation. Now, we've mentioned this yesterday to you, and it now seems that there is going to be a key financial angle to be looked into as well. The gunners have been probed over their location when the seer was found dead. One of them, Ajay Singh, is considered close to the seer. He's already been questioned multiple times. Reports suggest that Mahant had offered financial help to this man, Ajay Singh, his gunner, who had built properties then in eastern UP. And this was a big contentious issue between Mahant Giri and his disciple Anand, who opposed to the properties being built by this gunner. At the heart of this, it seems that there will be more than just discontent with their disciple. Fear of defamation, yes. Fear of information coming out and what that would do to the status of the Mahant, probably yes. But also power and money. And at some point, the police will have to look at it at a larger scale. Now, if we are to say that this suicide note is indeed written by Mahant Narendra Giri and that the details in it, which will be investigated now, are indeed real, then they show that he was being harassed, he was being threatened, he was being blackmailed. What could have possibly led to his death? If it was suicide, what drove him to that? And if there is anything else, what was that? That remains to be seen. And we are not going to speculate on any of that. The idea of this conversation is to give you as much information, is to help you and me understand the situation, the power dynamics, the faith, the equation that exists in these akhadas, the value, the power and the influence of someone like Mahant Narendra Giri, and what it will entail to have this investigation. Where do the police look into? What all will they look into? What could possibly come out? An extremely powerful, influential man, not just because of the followers of faith, but also with his connections within the political circles, the huge amount of property linked to the akhada itself. So many angles that the police will have to look at. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Manish Shukla, spokesperson for BJP in Uttar Pradesh, joins me this evening. Mr. Sudhir Mishra, resident editor for Navbharat Times, is with us again. Mr. A.L. Banerjee, former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, and Pradeep Kapoor, senior journalist, also joining me this evening. Mr. Banerjee, I want to start off with you on this because I mean, just for our viewers across the country to understand how tricky and sensitive and a high pressure this case is going to be for police to handle. There is a suicide note, yes, but there are several other angles that the police will have to look at.
You will have to bear with me. Let me start from the very beginning. This is a death which is an unknown death and a very suspicious death. People have been talking about it as a suicide. You just said that the post-mortem report says such and such. I talked to my friends in Allahabad, sorry, at Prayagraj, very senior levels, and they said that we have not given out the details of the post-mortem report yet. We are studying that. So how this person died, we are not sure about it. One thing is certain, this is a fairly tricky thing, but it can be handled properly. Unfortunately, it has all the, every kind of light is being spread on this because everybody wants to have a piece of action, everybody wants to say something about it. Now, second thing, you talked about the suicide note. How do we know whether it's a suicide note or not? Until and unless it is proved that it is a suicide note, that the dead person who wrote it actually, and it is not written by anybody else. Till such time, we call it a suspicious note or a note found in the body where, note found in the room where the body was. Number three is that I don't know, but the SIT should have by now reconstructed the scene of crime. The post-mortem has taken place. They know how the length of the body. They know the weight of the body now. They should make a doll of that size or use it to find out if those things could be done inside that room. Now, in the room, there are two versions. It was broken open, it was pushed open. That has to be found out. You've also talked about, then inside the room, if somebody is hanging by the fan, then his feet should not be touching the ground or the bed, which means that there has to be a intermediary, a stool or a chair on which this person would have stood and hanged himself if it is a suicide. And if it is a homicide, then two people minimum or more than that would have hung him up. Panchayat Nama would have taken place, which would have included all the injuries in his body. They will have to be correlated with everything which the post-mortem report says. Whether antemortem injuries have taken place or not has to be found out. There are certain set of principles which talk about if there is a suicidal hanging, what will be the state of the body? Are those fulfilled or not? And then the doctor will come to a conclusion that whether this was a suicide or not. The doctor has to be very clear whether this is a suicidal hanging or a homicidal hanging. So till now, I have not heard or I don't know whether a recreation of the scene has taken place or not. I have not read Tanvi, I asked you to bear with me. You have not seen the post-mortem report, neither have I. It is not in the open. Number three, the note which has been found, which is now purported to be a suicide note, which I don't think is, which I would not call a suicide note, which I'll call a note found in the room, will be sent to the forensic experts. They will say, not anybody else, they will say whether the handwriting was that of the dead man or not. And these are the basic major questions which once worked out will lead you to the conclusion. The other thing is that it is said that somebody instigated or somebody blackmailed him. For that purpose, the entire electronic, digital evidence has to be collected and it has to be analyzed whether such a thing happened or not. A minor fracas between two people, the disciple and the chela and the guru, can take place anywhere. Probably this is one of the things which keeps happening in a mutt. But for this particular purpose, that there was a blackmail, etc., it has to be proved. So all these things have to be proved end to end to find out this. And this kind of a pressure, where the press, where the people, everybody wants it to be instantly found out, is not going to help.
Well, I completely agree with you, Mr. Banerjee. In fact, we've repeatedly highlighted this is still an alleged suicide note for us. We've been saying that, it's handwriting analysis and handwriting assessment is yet to be done for us to even assume if it's real or not and written by whom. On the post-mortem part, we don't have a copy, but we do know that the ADG Law and Order himself has come and briefed us. So we're not speculating. We're actually going with what ADG Law and Order has said about the prelim findings basis this post-mortem that was done. I would also at this point highlight that all of yesterday at least, there were multiple versions coming even from senior police officials on what's happening and what's not happening. A lot of that now seems to have streamlined at least. Let me also tell our viewers that many of the people who would be, one would assume, are the first round of people who get questioned. You know, those immediately around, those who found the body, those who were given the duty of guarding the Mahant and were actually around him all the time. Most of them were actually questioned today, barring this one gunner, Ajay Singh, who's been questioned now multiple times yesterday and today. The other PSOs were actually only brought in for questioning today. So a lot of the actual investigation work has just about begun today. But let me also say good evening to Vivek Silla, spokesperson for Samajwadi Party. He missed out his name in the beginning. Vivek, I'll come to you in just a bit. I want our experts to first highlight and make us understand a little bit more about what's going on. Mr. Sudhir Mishra, I come back to you. One aspect that has emerged and is under the scanner for investigation is some of the property dealings of this one Ajay Singh, the gunner Ajay Singh, and the money that he allegedly took to buy the properties that Anand Giri was opposed to. Now again, the larger point I'm trying to make is that do you believe this investigation will lead into specific money transactions and property transactions, and at the heart of this entire situation is something that links to power and money? Mr. Mishra, I'm not able to hear you. You may be on mute.
मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि ये मामला लगातार पेचीदा होता जा रहा है और काफी उलझता जा रहा है। इस तरह इस पूरे मामले में जितने तरीके के एंगल हैं, उसमें मुझे नहीं लगता कि ये जो अभी लोकल पुलिस ऑफिसर्स हैं वो इसको ठीक से जांच पाएंगे, और मुझे लगता है कि इसमें सीबीआई इंक्वायरी के को लेकर कोर्ट में लोग जाने वाले हैं या चले गए हैं। तो ये मामला, इस मामले में जितने ज्यादा एंगल हैं, अब जैसे लेटर की ही बात आ रही है, तो कल जो उनके जिनको उन्होंने अपना उत्तराधिकारी लेटर में घोषित किया है, स्वामी बलवीर गिरी ऐसे कुछ नाम है उनका, कल उन्होंने कहा था कि वो राइटिंग पहचानते हैं और आज उन्होंने कहा कि वो राइटिंग नहीं पहचानते हैं। कल उन्होंने कहा था कि मैं उत्तराधिकार लेने को तैयार हूं, आज उन्होंने कहा है कि मैं पंच परमेश्वर जो तय करेंगे वो मैं करूंगा। तो रोज ब रोज बयान बदल रहे हैं, रोज ब रोज फैक्ट्स बदल रहे हैं। अब वो फैक्ट्स क्यों बदल रहे हैं, किसके कहने में बदल रहे हैं, क्यों ऐसा हो रहा है, ये सब बहुत मतलब उच्च स्तरीय जांच की इसमें मुझे लगता है जरूरत है। बहुत सारे एंगल हैं, जितने मामले उन्होंने अपने लेटर में लिखे हैं वो तो है ही है, उसके अलावा भी बहुत सारी चीजें हैं। और जो आनंद गिरी का मामला है, आनंद गिरी ने तो साफ कहा कि ये हत्या है या आत्महत्या नहीं है। तो बहुत सारी चीजें देखने की जरूरत है, इसमें कोई एक एंगल नहीं है। इसको जब तक कि इसकी गहराई से पूरी जांच नहीं होगी और उसमें पूरी निष्पक्षता नहीं बरती जाएगी, इस तरह का इसमें राजनीतिक इन्वॉल्वमेंट की बात आ रही है, तमाम तरीके के पॉलिटिशियंस, अलग अलग पार्टियों के राजनीतिज्ञों की बात आ रही है, उनके साथ हुई प्रॉपर्टी की डील की बात आ रही है। मुझे तो ये मामला बहुत उलझा हुआ लगता है और बड़ा मुश्किल होगा इस मामले में किसी नतीजे तक पहुंचना। मैं आज कह रहा हूँ आपको, आप देखिएगा कि ये इतनी आसानी से सुलझने वाला मामला है नहीं।
जी, अगर इसमें प्रॉपर फुल फ्लेजेड फेयर इन्वेस्टिगेशन हो तो इसमें से तो उनके क्या ट्रांजैक्शंस थे, किसके साथ रिलेशंस थे? सुधीर मिश्रा जी, जो आप ये बात कह रहे हैं, ये किस लिए बार बार सामने आ रही है? इज इट बिकॉज ही वाज पॉलिटिकली क्लोज टू ऑलमोस्ट एवरी पार्टी एंड स्पेशली द लोकल लीडर्स अक्रॉस पार्टी लाइंस?
बिल्कुल नहीं, मतलब उनके, आप देखिए जो पुलिस ऑफिसर्स जांच कर रहे हैं, जिन पर आरोप लग रहे हैं, उनके भी करीब है पॉलिटिशियन, उनके वो भी काफी पैसे वाले लोग, सब जो दूसरे जिनके ऊपर आरोप लगे हैं, जिनको जेल भेज दिया गया है, वो समृद्ध लोग हैं, उनके पास भी अच्छे वकील हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं। किसी पे खाली चिट्ठी के आधार पे ही पूरी चीजें नहीं बनती हैं। और जिन सर्कमस्टांसेस में लाश को उतारा गया है, जिस तरह की रस्सी का इस्तेमाल किया गया है, जिस तरीके के उसके अंदर 2 दरवाजे हैं, एक पीछे से खुलता है, एक आगे से खुलता है, जिस तरह के 2 पेन का इस्तेमाल है, 24 कट लगाए गए हैं लेटर में, बहुत सारी बातें हैं जो तरह तरह के संदेह पैदा करती हैं। और सिर्फ किसी एक के ऊपर खाली उंगली उठा देने से बात बनेगी नहीं, जब तक कि इस पे बहुत गहराई से जांच न की।
In fact, जो आपने point कहा is, let me take this across to Manish Shukla. Mr. Manish Shukla, if the police, moves quickly to arrest people and to claim whether it's murder or suicide, it's a problem. If the police moves too slowly, then it's a problem as to why haven't you questioned anybody, why haven't you arrested anybody. But this is a very complicated case. I was surprised, for example, that पहली ही न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस में सीनियर पुलिस ऑफिशियल्स ने आके ये बोल दिया कि सुसाइड नोट मिला. We are till now calling it an alleged suicide note because the police hasn't verified it yet. So, are you sure that the police will be able to do a proper, expert, free and fair investigation?
देखिए तन्वी जी, ब्रह्मलीन आचार्य नरेंद्र गिरी जी के दुखद मृत्यु से पूरा समाज मर्माहत है, साधु समाज, संत समाज. कल उत्तर प्रदेश के मुख्यमंत्री जी स्वयं प्रयागराज गए थे और उन्होंने श्रद्धांजलि भी दी और साथ साथ संत समाज और साधु समाज को भरोसा भी दिया कि इसके पीछे जो भी होगा, मृत्यु पर ये अभी तो चूंकि मृत्यु इस पे है कि हत्या है या आत्महत्या है, इस सभी एंगल्स पे एसआईटी जांच कर रही है. लेकिन जो भी कारण होगा, अगर हत्या है तो क्यों हुई है, अगर आत्महत्या है तो ऐसी क्या परिस्थिति थी जिसके नाते से ये कदम उठाने के लिए स्वर्गीय नरेंद्र गिरी जी मजबूर हुए. इस सभी एंगल्स की जांच एसआईटी कर रही है. मुख्यमंत्री जी स्वयं मॉनिटरिंग कर रहे हैं. एसआईटी जो जांच कर रही है, एडीजी, आईजी और डीआईजी को लगाया गया है. और हमको लगता है कि अभी एक सवाल आपने मुझसे पूछा, यद्यपि अब तमाम एक्सपर्ट्स आपके चैनल पर, आपके पैनल पर हैं, फॉर्मर डीजी भी बैठे हुए हैं, लेकिन जहां तक मेरा अनुभव है सामाजिक जीवन का, जब कोई इस तरह की घटना होती है तो जांच सर्वप्रथम तो सुसाइडल नोट जो मिलता है, सुसाइडल नोट पे सवाल खड़े हो रहे हैं, ये बात ठीक है, लेकिन प्रथम कदम तो जो भी एसआईटी होगी या जांच एजेंसी होगी तो उसको एक बार पढ़ेगी जरूर और उसके आधार पे पूछताछ और अपने कदम को बढ़ाएगी जरूर. हाँ, फॉरेंसिक जांच होगी, पोस्टमार्टम 5 डॉक्टरों के पैनल से कराया गया है, उसकी रिपोर्ट आई है, विस्तृत रिपोर्ट अभी आनी बाकी है. तो हमको लगता है कि कम से कम पोस्टमार्टम की विस्तृत रिपोर्ट आ जाए और उसके आधार पे अगर कोई सरकार को ऐसा लगता है कि किसी अन्य एजेंसी से जांच कराना आवश्यक है, तो मुख्यमंत्री जी स्वयं इस बात को मानते हैं. एक पीठ के पीठाधीश्वर हैं, तो मुख्यमंत्री के नाते से भी और एक पीठ के पीठाधीश्वर के नाते से वो भी बहुत मर्माहत है और पीछे का जो सच है वो सामने लाना चाहते हैं.
पीछे का जो सच है वो सामने लाना चाहते हैं. ये क्या यही सब पार्टीज चाहती हैं, विवेक सिलसन? क्या ये उत्तर प्रदेश की पुलिस करके दिखाएगी फिर?
Yes, very good evening to you, ma'am. I feel this matter has to be taken much more serious, and a proper and a deep-rooted investigation should be carried out under the supervision of a High Court justice. That is what we want. I just want to remind the viewers and all of you in the panel, if you remember, July 2019, Vagambadi Peet Niranjan Akhara's Ashish Giri's body was found in a depopulated state, and all the sadhus demanded of a CBI inquiry. But the state of Uttar Pradesh and the government led by the Yogi Adityanath, they declined it and they just said it is just a suicide. If we see the closest disciples of the Mahant who has just sadly passed away, we talk about Deepak Giri, we talk about Ramji Tripathi, Ashish Shukla was very, very close to him. They all said that the Maharaj could not read or write. A person who cannot read or write, how can he write a suicidal note of 15 pages? That is a big question. Even Jitendra Saraswati ji said the same thing. He belongs to a very big akhara. Investigation should be carried out, ma'am, and justice should prevail as to how the door was broken. It was open without the presence of police. No videography has been done as yet. And I would like to tell, as our former DGP, Sir A.L. Banerjee Saab said, it is a suspicious death. That is what the top former cop is saying. And it has not been handled properly. That is also what he said, the former DGP who is sitting with us on the panel. And the third question, a very important question that Mr. Banerjee raised, how do you know that it's a suicidal note. That too is suspicious. We can just presume, and we were talking about the ADG law and order. But let me remind you, ma'am, and the viewers, this is the same ADG law and order who, when the Hathras rape was, I'm sorry to say that, when such an incident took place in Uttar Pradesh, the same ADG law and order was saying it is a fake news. How can you believe a person like this who can say that Hathras kind was a fake news? That is what the Uttar Pradesh police says. Even the advisor to the chief minister was saying it is a fake news. Even the Agra police tweeted on his official Twitter handle that Hathras is a fake news. How can you believe such people who lie right in front of your face? And when the CBI was inducted into the case, everything was absolutely clear.
Okay.
And that is the reason.
Okay.
And
So
that is the reason why we are asking for a deep-rooted CBI inquiry, ma'am.
Okay. I have to go across to one more panelist, Mr. Pradeep Kapoor, but I'll request him to stay with me for 2 more minutes because Manish Shukla must respond to this, the aspect of how can we trust ADG law and order and why should we not give it to the CPI?
देखिए तन्वी जी, ये जो प्रकरण है तो आस्था से जुड़ा प्रकरण है और संवेदनशील इशू है, लेकिन ऐसे समय में जिस तरीके से पुरानी घटनाओं को सामने ला रहे हैं, मुझे लगता है कि अभी राजनीति करने का समय नहीं है, क्योंकि अगर हम पुरानी घटनाओं में जाएं तो तमाम ऐसी घटनाएं हैं जिसका जवाब साइलेंस नहीं दे पाएंगे। तो मुझे ये लगता है कि आज जिस पॉइंट पे डिबेट हो रही है, जिस इशू पे डिबेट है, उसी डिबेट पे केंद्रित करें। राजनीति करने के अवसर बहुत लगेंगे, पूरा समाज, संत समाज इस समय मर्माहत है और कोई भी बयानबाजी ऐसी नहीं होनी चाहिए जिससे जांच की दिशा प्रभावित हो।
I have one question, and we seem to have lost that line with Mr. Pradeep Kapoor, and we're going to try and get him back. But Mr. Banerjee, the police did not seek custody of the two who've been arrested today. What explains this decision that they they've arrested them, but they've not sought their custody, and hence they are in judicial custody today?
Well, the point is that prima facie, the investigating agency, the SIT, thought and had sufficient evidence to believe that a case under Section 306 was made out against the two people who are in judicial custody. Seeking police custody would come later because until and unless the other things are further developed. You see, there has been a report saying that the gentleman who's in the jail, his properties or where he stayed in Haridwar has been sealed from all the sides. Well, that is forensically speaking, that's a very good thing to have happened. I don't know whether the Mahant who died, his room has been sealed or not, should have been, must have been. But these two things, and then when they recreate the scene, when they come to a conclusion that this needs further investigation with the custody of the person concerned, that is when they will seek custody. It's not essential that the moment you arrest a person, you seek custody. So
Okay.
this is I think absolutely correct. One more thing I would like to point out is you had said it at the very beginning. That is about the number of security aides this gentleman had, and their role is under suspicion. Now remember, he had lunch. After lunch, he goes in for a rest, and he should have come out at about 3:30. He does not. At about 5:30 approximately, his underlings, they break open the door and then they find him the way they do. Now, there is nobody who's a protectee will keep a security aide inside the room. Probably those guys were outside. And as to this man Ajay Singh making a lot of properties, etc., that is, again, a part of an exercise, investigative exercise, which can be thrashed out.
Right.
That is not a very, very, very heavy thing to do. However, we have to go very slowly and very gradually. If we hurry the things, justice hurried is justice buried. We should not do it.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Let me go across to Mr. Pradeep Kapoor then. And Mr. Pradeep Kapoor, the point that Sudhir Mishra was also making, and I come back to that, is there a larger concern, and is this why there is so much of speculation also? Because Mahant Narendra Giri was an extremely influential person who was also politically connected. And once this investigation begins, there may be several, interactions, transactions, deals that could become problematic politically speaking.
Yeah, I agree with what Sudhir said, and I also see that Mr. Banerjee has raised the point. The seriousness in the investigation, which should have been in this case, and the Narendra Giri commands so much influence all over the country, one of the most respected saint, and happens to be the president of All India Akhara Sabha. So it requires a serious and sincere investigation into the circumstances in which his body was found. So I don't think that seriousness or the sincerity on the part of the authorities, which should have been, is not there. So more serious investigations is required to look into the all aspect and the circumstances in which his body was found and the allegations leveled by his disciple, because the involvement of money is there, the angle of lady is also there, because the manner in which and the veracity of the suicide note is also to be found, whether it is correct or not. So this need to be, all aspects should be taken into the consideration so that the confidence of the people who are looking toward this case all over the country should be restored.
Well, what is it that makes him, such a sensitive issue, apart from the fact that there will be hundreds of followers, of this akhada who are present? What is it that is making so many people nervous today, Mr. Pradeep Kapoor?
He is very sensitive. And the amount of respect that he commanded. So I think it need to be probed properly.
Okay. Let me also go back to Mr. Sudhir Mishra. Mr. Mishra, we spoke about Anand Giri, who's at the heart of this case now and in judicial custody. He's often, been in controversies. There have been several reports of various transgressions that he allegedly got into. But to you, does it seem as an issue between Mahant and Anand Giri? Are there other, forces at play that will also have to be investigated?
ये बिल्कुल मनोहर कहानियां, सत्य कहानियां और जो जासूसी नॉवेल्स होते हैं ना, बिल्कुल वैसी कहानी बन रही है कि जिस तरह से सारी शक की सुई और जो पूरा प्लॉट है वो इशारा कर रहा है साफ साफ कि आनंद गिरी ही इसका मेन कल्प्रिट है। लेकिन ऐसे ही मौकों पर इन्वेस्टिगेटर का काम होता है कि वो देखे कि कहीं कोई और कुछ प्लान तो नहीं कर रहा है। भाई हो सकता है आनंद गिरी ही, लेकिन इतना ओपन एंड शट, अगर नॉर्मली देखें तो बड़ा ओपन एंड शट लग रहा है। 7 पेज का लेटर है, उसमें सारी बातें लिखी हुई है, ये लोग जिम्मेदार हैं। क्या ये केस इतना ही सीधा है? ये जांचने का विषय है, क्योंकि इसमें बहुत सारे पेच हैं। इसलिए ठीक है, आनंद गिरी का निश्चित तौर पे उनका जो अपना कैरेक्टर रहा है और जो उनका अपना व्यवहार रहा है और वो जिस तरह के ऐशो आराम और उनके वो रहे, उन पर सवाल उठने चाहिए और सवाल जायज है। लेकिन इस पूरे कांड में उनकी जो भूमिका है उसकी मुझे लगता है ईमानदारी से जांच, अगर वही दोषी है तो उनके खिलाफ एक्शन हो, इसमें किसी को कोई संदेह नहीं होना चाहिए, लेकिन हर पहलू देखा जाना चाहिए।
नहीं, मैं और ये समझने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि आनंद गिरी तो डायरेक्ट, जैसे आपने कहा, बड़ा सिंपल सा केस लग रहा है, अगर वही है तो ठीक है, लेकिन और भी पहलू हो सकते हैं। ये क्यों? और इसके लिए ये बहुत ज़रूरी है समझना कि इतना बड़ा जो अखाड़ा है उसकी क्या डायनामिक्स रहती है, किस लेवल पे वो ऑपरेट करता है, कितने पावरफुल लोग उसमें रहते हैं, अलग अलग तरीके के पावरफुल डेजिग्नेशंस रहेंगे, क्या किस लेवल के ट्रांजैक्शंस होते हैं। आनंद गिरी ने तो 5 ऐसे ट्रांजैक्शन हमें कल गिना दिए अपने डिफेंस में कि इधर 5 करोड़ की डील हुई, उधर 3 करोड़ की डील हुई, उससे 4 करोड़ लेने थे। तो इसके बारे में थोड़ा समझाइए मिस्टर मिश्रा।
जो अखाड़े हैं और जिस अखाड़े की बात, जिस आश्रम की बात नरेंद्र गिरी जी से जो जुड़ी हुई है, उसकी बहुत सारी संपत्तियां हैं। वो केवल इलाहाबाद में नहीं है, वो हरिद्वार में है, वो नासिक में है, वो और भी जो पीठे हैं वहां पर है। तो वो उसके क्या उसमें कितने पेज हैं, मतलब मैंने बहुत सारा पढ़ा भी है, लेकिन मैं उसको अभी शायद बताने की स्थिति में नहीं हूँ। बहुत सारी चीजें हैं और बहुत सारे पॉलिटिशियंस का भी इन्वॉल्वमेंट है, बहुत सारे राजनीतिज्ञों से भी संबंध है, और जहां पे प्रॉपर्टी होती है वहां पर तरह तरह की, अब जैसे प्रॉपर्टी डीलर्स के नाम आ रहे हैं, जो फ्लैट्स बनने के, आश्रम की जो जमीन बेची गई इसमें जो फ्लैट्स बनने के बात आ रही है, तो जहां प्रॉपर्टी डीलर्स होते हैं वहीं कोई पॉलिटिशियन भी इन्वॉल्व होता है, उनको आपस में कहीं पॉलिटिशियन का पैसा लगा होता है, कहीं कोई चीजें होती है, तो बहुत सारे तिकड़म है, बहुत सारे इसमें चीजें होंगी, उनको देखा जाना चाहिए। और जो अखाड़ों का अपना, देखिए बेसिकली अखाड़ों का काम तो हिंदू धर्म की रक्षा का था। जब बौद्ध धर्म बहुत ज्यादा फैलने लगा तब शंकराचार्य जी ने इस तरह की पीठों की स्थापना की, अखाड़े हुए जो हिंदू धर्म की रक्षा के लिए थे, और वो काम हुआ भी। लेकिन बाद में उसमें भक्तों का प्रसाद चढ़ाना, भक्तों का संपत्ति चढ़ाना और इस तरह से संपत्तियां अर्जित करना, लोगों ने जमीनें दान की होंगी, बहुत सारी चीजें होंगी, और वो लगातार उत्तरोत्तर समय के साथ में बढ़ती रही। और अखाड़ों के बीच में इस तरह के संघर्ष बहुत सामान्य बातें पहले भी होते रहे हैं, चाहे वो अयोध्या में देख लीजिए, हरिद्वार में देख लीजिए, सभी जगह, बनारस में देखिए, बहुत सारे संघर्ष हुए हैं और इनका पूरा एक इतिहास है, लड़ाइयों का इतिहास है। और इसमें काफी लोग जो मतलब उनको ब्रह्मलीन होते नहीं, उनको कर दिया जाता है। बहुत सारी हत्याएं हुई हैं इस तरह के मामलों में, अखाड़ों की संपत्तियों के विवाद को लेकर। तो ये एक पूरा अलग विषय है और इस पे तो मुझे लगता है कि अब ये सारी चीजें खुलकर सामने आएंगी।
जी प्रदीप कपूर, डू यू अग्री कि खुलकर सामने आएंगी? बिकॉज यूजुअली जब इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड, सेंसिटिव और मनी हैवी हो जाता है तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना भी मुश्किल हो जाता है।
I know, but I want that things should come out so that the people's confidence is restored in such akhadas, because as the Sudhir rightly pointed out, that the involvement of money and the real estate and so many things are involved. And we have seen all over the UP, there have been so many murders past, say, 40 years during my period of journalism. I have been to Banaras and other places also covering such things. So there is a need for a comprehensive investigations so that the real truth is come out and the confidence in such akhadas is restored. Otherwise, people will be seeing that there have been so many murders, be it in Ayodhya, Banaras, or wherever, for money and power and everything.
Which is why, Mr. Manish Shukla, there are many who say that this is not a straight open and shut case, which is why perhaps there are many who are raising the demand of a CBI investigation. Do you still believe that's just being political?
देखिए, आवश्यकता पड़ने पर किसी भी एजेंसी से जांच कराने में उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार पीछे नहीं हटेगी, क्योंकि मुख्यमंत्री जी का स्पष्ट मानना है कि सच सामने आए। अभी बनर्जी जी आपके चैनल पर है, पैनल पर है, उत्तर प्रदेश की पुलिस को उन्होंने लीड किया है। उत्तर प्रदेश की पुलिस और जो SIT बनी है वो सक्षम है इन चीजों को शॉर्ट आउट करने में। अभी सुधीर मिश्रा जी ने भी कहा, मैं इस बात से सहमत हूँ कि तमाम एंगल्स हैं इस पूरे प्रकरण में। इस प्रकरण को केवल एक सुसाइडल नोट या किसी के बयान के आधार पर नहीं देखा जाना चाहिए। SIT को थोड़ा समय देना चाहिए, पोस्टमार्टम की जो विस्तृत रिपोर्ट है वो सामने आ जाए, और निश्चित रूप से सरकार की मंशा है कि ब्रह्मलीन नरेंद्र गिरी जी को सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि तभी होगी जब इस पूरे प्रकरण का दूध और पानी का पानी साफ हो।
Absolutely. In fact, Mr. Banerjee, just to add to what you were saying earlier as to why we have to proceed with so much caution, and everybody just wants to have their own say, wants to put in their own angle. I was actually reading that one of the other Akhara chiefs actually came out, the Niranjani Akhara chief actually came out and told several other media channels that the Mahant had a head injury, that the suicide letter was not written by him. Now the point is that we can't aid such speculation, we can't give platform to such voices or get carried away, but it leaves a shred of doubt in the minds of people, and at the end of the day then the questions will be asked of the UP police whether they managed to do a fair investigation or fell under some political pressure.
Did you ask me that question?
Yes, Mr. Banerjee.
You see, I'll just talk about one more incident like this. A couple of years back, a very famous godman called Bhayuji Maharaj committed suicide in Indore. A similar furor was created. However, recently, the Indore police has submitted a charge sheet in that particular matter. That is also a case under section 306. UP police is a very large police force and it has very competent police officers. Because of the kind of pressure which is being seen on this particular case, they'll have to be much more careful. And yes, they can produce the results. I'm sure about it. There is nothing wrong with the Uttar Pradesh police. We definitely can. I'd also like to mention one more thing while I'm on. The thing is that in India, unfortunately, any mutt or any religious order, the importance of that is shown by which political leader visits it. I'll give you an example. Dhiren Brahmachari, you remember him? Chandra Swami, you remember him? Similarly, in this particular case, or for that matter, the person who's right now the Mathadhish of Jyotirpith in Badrinath. Similarly, it is also seen within the mutts that who are the top political leaders who are visiting these. Their importance also goes up. So it is a mutual admiration society literally, or a mutual help society literally, of top politicians and top mutt people. So that is also one of the things that are material in this particular case.
Okay, final comments from Vivek Silas before I wrap this conversation up. Yes, Vivek.
Yes, ma'am, I'll keep it very short. It's not only the opposition that which is demanding a deep-rooted inquiry into this. It's also the saints and the sadhus who have raised their voices for a deep-rooted inquiry. It's not only the opposition. If we are demanding justice and if we are demanding that a deep-rooted inquiry should be set up, I don't think anyone in the panel or even the viewers will disagree to that. You rightly said, Tanvi ji, it's not an open and shut case. And I just want to remind Mr. Shukla that almost 30 sadhus in Uttar Pradesh have been murdered since Yogi ji has come to power from 2017. That is also a fact, and we know it is on record. 30 sadhus have been murdered in Uttar Pradesh since Yogi ji has taken over Uttar Pradesh as the chief minister. And one more thing, Ashish Giri ji's body was also found in Prayagraj. It was in a dilapidated state. But what did the Uttar Pradesh police and the government do in 2019 July? They eventually said it is a suicide. So in this case, at least, this should not happen, and a deep-rooted investigation should be carried.
No, but why do you believe that the BJP doesn't want the same thing?
As our former DGP, Mr. Banerjee said, rightly said, it is a suspicious death, and we need to come out with the truth. And it is we are not believing on Uttar Pradesh police as a whole, because I just quoted the Hathras case. It was the same ADG law and order. It was the same Uttar Pradesh police. They were trying to stand with the criminals and saying and tweeting and giving interviews that nothing of that sort has happened and it's all fake. It's the same police, ma'am. It's the same ADG law and order. Why should we be suspicious?
Because in this case, they have already come out from Chief Minister to Deputy Chief Minister to DIG and ADG claiming that they will do a fair investigation and they also want to find the truth. Chief Minister was also one of the first people to actually go and pay his respects to the late Mahant. Yes, Manish Shukla wants to respond to this.
You rightly said, even we want that truth should come out.
मैं किसी राजनीतिक टिप्पणी में नहीं जाना चाहता था, लेकिन चूंकि दूसरी बार चर्चा के दूसरे दौर में भी इस तरह की टिप्पणी से बाज नहीं आ रहे हैं अखिलेश यादव की पार्टी के प्रवक्ता, तो 2012 से 17 के बीच में हर दूसरे दिन 2-2 किलो पीतल के घंटे के लिए साधु और संतों की जिस तरह से मंदिरों में हत्या होती थी, वो दिन हम लोग को
आपसे कम हुई है।
समाजवादी पार्टी
आपकी तरह
साधु संत
हम नहीं बोलते हैं कि हाथरस में कुछ नहीं हुआ,
चिंता करने लगे।
हम रातों रात लाशों को नहीं जलवा
इससे बड़ा झूठ और कुछ नहीं है।
आज एडीजी एंड लॉ एंड ऑर्डर क्यों वहां बैठे हुए हैं?
Okay, Vivek, let him finish his point, please. Sorry, Vivek, let him finish his point, please. उनको अपना पॉइंट तो खत्म कर देने दीजिए। हाँ, यस मनीष शुक्ला।
मुझे मेरे अवसर पर बोलने की अनुमति होनी चाहिए। देखिए, साधु संत, मंदिर, मठ, भगवाधारी इनकी सुरक्षा की चिंता जब सपा करने लगे तो इससे बड़ा झूठ और कोई नहीं हो सकता। ये पूरा उत्तर प्रदेश और देश जानता है। तो घड़ियाली आंसू मत बहाइए, राजनीति मत करिए। संवेदनशील और आस्था से जुड़ा विषय है। यद्यप आप लोग को आस्था से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, लेकिन उत्तर प्रदेश की पुलिस प्रोफेशनल पुलिस है और अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो सारे कदम सरकार उठाएगी।
मैं ये बस बोल दूं, लेकिन मिस्टर मनीष शुक्ला, that it's so many contradictory versions already came out in the first 2 days that we hope that now the UP police actually is able to move in an organized, clear direction manner and follow the process that needs to be done to find out if this was a suicide or there was foul play involved and who is behind it. Out of time. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for joining us on this conversation. Again and again, I'm going to highlight this fact that we're not here to speculate about what has happened. We are not here to jump the gun, as in any other case, to jump the gun as to what has happened in such an instance of crime, such an instance of what seems like a suicide, an alleged suicide note that has been found, and 2 people who've now been arrested. Simply put, this is going to be a very, very sensitive and complicated case, because not only is a question of faith linked to it, not only is there thousands of people who actually follow this akhada and were devotees of the month, the seers who were involved, and hence it's a religious issue. It's also because there is politics linked to it. It's also because there is large sums of money, crores of money in the property deals and the properties themselves that are linked to it. It's also because often these things do turn ugly within the seers and the akhadas. It's just that the law and order authorities tend to stay away from it, tend to look the other way. The allegations that have been made, the claims that have been made in this alleged suicide note are explosive. And those too will need investigation. And once that happens, we don't know what will come out. But we will keep a close track of it. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.